The morning air of New York City carried that familiar mix of ambition and exhaustion, coffee, car exhaust, and dreams colliding in the same breath. Ryan Carter walked slowly down Lexington Avenue, wearing a faded gray hoodie and steel-toed boots, his hands rough from the week's construction work. To everyone who passed, he looked like any other laborer heading to a job site. Only a few knew that he was, in truth, the only son of billionaire real estate tycoon Charles Carter. Ryan's father had given him one last challenge before granting him control of the family empire. "Go live like an ordinary man for 1 year," Charles had said. "Earn something honest. Find someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you own. Only then will you understand what it means to lead." So Ryan had left the penthouse behind. He rented a modest room above a diner, traded designer suits for worn jeans, and took a job at one of his father's construction companies under a false name. No one there knew he was the boss's son. Not even the human resources clerk who had stamped his ID badge. That's where he met Vanessa Miller. Vanessa was everything the city adored: glamorous, confident, magnetic. She worked in the marketing department of the same company and was dating the assistant manager, a smooth-talking man named Greg. To Vanessa, construction workers were invisible. The first time Ryan held the door open for her, she didn't even glance at him. A week later, when they both ended up waiting for the elevator, she finally noticed him, but not kindly. "You work downstairs, right?" she asked, eyeing the dust on his boots. "Yeah," Ryan said, smiling. "Site B, concrete section." She folded her arms. "You guys really should clean up before walking through the offices. It ruins the aesthetic." Ryan only chuckled. "I'll remember that." Her tone made it clear she considered him beneath her. But he wasn't angry, he was intrigued. She reminded him of every person who judged without knowing the story behind the dirt. Later that week, while eating lunch near the company courtyard, Ryan saw another woman struggling to balance her files and coffee. She wore simple clothes, her hair tied in a neat ponytail, glasses slipping down her nose. He jumped up and helped her gather the papers before the wind scattered them. "Thanks," she said breathlessly. "I'm Clara." "Ryan," he replied, offering her coffee back. Clara Evans worked as a junior accountant, quiet, kind, and invisible in the glittering hierarchy of the company. She laughed easily even at his dry jokes and never looked down on anyone. Soon their shared lunches became the best part of his days. Vanessa, on the other hand, kept flaunting her social life, posting filtered pictures of rooftop parties and luxury dinners on Instagram. Ryan followed her account from his anonymous profile and watched how her world revolved around status. Each post was a performance, each caption, a cry for validation. One afternoon, Vanessa was in the lobby arguing loudly on her phone. "I can't date a man with no ambition, Greg. If you can't get that promotion, what's even the point?" She hung up and noticed Ryan nearby carrying toolboxes. She rolled her eyes. "Don't you have work to do?" Ryan smiled calmly. "Always do." He walked away, but her words lingered. The contrast between her arrogance and Clara's warmth grew sharper every day. When a company charity event was announced, Vanessa posted it all over her socials. Ryan decided to attend, not as the billionaire's son, but as the quiet worker no one noticed. He borrowed a clean shirt and sat at the far end of the ballroom. The evening glittered with champagne and small talk. Clara arrived late, shy and understated in a simple blue dress. Vanessa strutted in moments later wearing a gown that looked straight out of a magazine. The difference between them was night and day, but Ryan's eyes found Clara immediately. During the silent auction, Vanessa bragged loudly about her boyfriend's new car. "A Mercedes," she said to her group. "Not bad, right? Some people can't even afford subway fare." Her gaze slid briefly toward Ryan, who was helping move chairs at the back. Clara caught the look and frowned. Later, when she passed him by, she whispered, "Don't let her bother you." He smiled. "I won't." That night, as the music softened, Ryan and Clara ended up on the balcony overlooking the city lights. The skyline shimmered like a sea of fireflies. "Ever wonder what it's like up there?" Clara asked, pointing at the tallest tower. "Every day," Ryan said. "But I think it's lonelier than people imagine." She turned to him. "You sound like someone who's been there." He laughed softly. "Maybe in another life." They stood in silence, the distance between them shrinking with each breath. From that evening on, their friendship deepened. They talked about books, street food, and dreams that didn't fit neatly on resumes. Ryan admired how she helped her mother pay bills, how she tutored kids on weekends. She had a goodness that fame couldn't fake. Meanwhile, Vanessa's world began to wobble. Greg lost his promotion. Her followers noticed her sudden silence. When she caught Clara and Ryan laughing in the cafeteria, jealousy sparked. "Seriously, Clara?" Vanessa sneered later. "You're hanging out with the construction guy? What's next, dating the janitor?" Clara flushed but didn't answer. Ryan stepped in, his voice calm. "You'd be surprised who people turn out to be." Vanessa scoffed. "Yeah, sure. Let me know when he builds you a castle." Ryan smiled faintly, hiding the truth. Because what she didn't know was that the man she mocked owned the very building she worked in. Winter crept over the city, frosting car roofs and softening the edges of skyscrapers. Ryan kept showing up to work every day, his cover intact. He mixed cement, hauled steel, and lived like an ordinary man. What his co-workers didn't know was that every evening after he showered and changed, he slipped into a quiet corner cafe to check messages from his father's lawyers about the Carter holdings. One Thursday, Clara joined him there by accident. She was balancing a mug of hot chocolate and almost bumped into him. "Ryan? I didn't know you came here." He smiled. "It's my thinking spot. No noise, good coffee." She sat down across from him, eyes bright. "Then I'm intruding on sacred ground." They talked for hours, about childhood dreams, her late father, his vague family business. The lights dimmed as the cafe closed, and Ryan realized he hadn't laughed that much in months. Meanwhile, Vanessa's grip on appearances was slipping. Her boyfriend Greg dumped her when his boss discovered he'd falsified reports, and her social feed was full of forced smiles and recycled vacation pictures. When she spotted Ryan and Clara walking together one morning, she couldn't resist a jab. Well, Vanessa said loudly in the lobby. The accountant and the construction worker. What a power couple. Clara stiffened, but Ryan only looked amused. "Thanks," he said lightly. "We make it work." A few co-workers snickered. Vanessa smirked, satisfied she'd drawn blood, but Ryan's calm grin unsettled her. Something about him didn't quite fit the picture she painted in her mind. Later that day in the executive elevator, she overheard two senior managers whispering. "Mr. Charles Carter's son is supposed to visit next month," one said. "Nobody's seen him in ages." "The heir, right? He's been off the radar for a year." Vanessa's curiosity sharpened like a blade. "The heir of Carter Real Estate? That family owns this company." That night she scrolled through the internet searching for any trace of the mysterious heir. A few old photos surfaced, blurred shots from charity events, but none clear enough to recognize the face. She studied one grainy picture of a young man in a tuxedo, brown hair, kind eyes. Something about him tugged at her memory. The following week, Clara invited Ryan to a community fundraiser at a small art gallery. He helped set up tables, wearing his plain gray jacket. The crowd was modest, the laughter genuine. When Clara's mother arrived, kind, soft-spoken, Ryan insisted on carrying her coat and joked that the chili was better than any five-star meal. "You're good for my daughter," Mrs. Evans said warmly. Ryan smiled. "She's good for me." Clara blushed, glancing down at her cup. They danced later under fairy lights strung across the hall. Her laughter echoed through the music, and Ryan felt the ache of wanting to tell her everything, to stop pretending. But he wasn't done yet. His father's year-long test still had 2 months to go. A week later, fate decided to intervene. During a safety inspection at the construction site, a visiting journalist arrived to write a feature on everyday heroes. She recognized Ryan immediately, the elusive heir whose family had funded half the skyline. She approached him after the shift. "Mr. Carter, isn't it?" she asked. Ryan froze. "Please, not here." But the damage was done. A photographer snapped a picture of him helping a co-worker with a scaffold beam. The next morning, the image appeared online. Billionaire heir works secretly as construction worker. By noon, the office was buzzing. Vanessa nearly dropped her phone when she saw the headline. The man she'd mocked in the lobby was trending on social media. "Ryan Carter," she whispered. "You've got to be kidding me." When he arrived that afternoon, the site fell silent. Some workers stared, others laughed nervously. Vanessa practically sprinted across the floor in heels. "Ryan, why didn't you tell anyone who you really are?" she cried, her voice sugar-sweet now. He looked at her evenly. "Because it shouldn't matter." "Oh, come on. You could have trusted me," she said, batting her lashes. "I did," he replied. "And you showed me exactly who you are." She flushed, her smile cracking. Clara, standing nearby, looked stunned. "You're the heir?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, but I'm still me." She didn't say anything at first, just turned away to process it all. The news had moved too fast. The office cameras caught every reaction. Vanessa, realizing she'd lost her chance, played the victim instead. "He led us all on," she exclaimed to anyone who'd listen. Pretending to be poor, it's manipulative. But few believed her. Screens around the city flashed headlines praising the young billionaire's humility. That evening Ryan tried calling Clara, but she didn't pick up. When he reached her apartment, she finally opened the door, eyes red from tears. "I don't know what to think, Ryan," she said quietly. "You lied." "I know," he said. "But I needed to be sure about people's hearts. Especially yours." She hesitated. "And now you are?" He took her hands gently. "Now I'm certain." She wanted to believe him. Yet the weight of deception hung between them. "I need time," she whispered. He nodded and left her with space. Meanwhile, Vanessa saw an opportunity. She marched straight to the Carter corporate tower the next morning, perfectly dressed, claiming she'd been close friends with Ryan. Security nearly laughed, but when Ryan stepped out of the elevator, he met her gaze calmly. "Vanessa," he said. "There's no need for this." "I just came to apologize," she said, her voice dripping sweetness. "I didn't realize who you were." "That's exactly the problem," he replied. "You treated people based on who you thought they were." Her fake smile faltered. That weekend, Ryan disappeared from public view. News anchors speculated, tabloids spun stories. In truth, he spent the time visiting Clara's old neighborhood, talking to her friends, even funding repairs for the local community center she'd volunteered at. Quietly, anonymously. When Clara heard, her resolve began to soften. The man she'd known, the kind, humble worker, was still there behind the name and fortune. A month passed, and the city thawed beneath the first promise of spring. Ryan had returned quietly to his father's mansion, a world of glass walls and skyline views, but he didn't feel at home. The wealth that once defined him now felt heavy, almost suffocating. Every morning, he stared at his reflection in the vast mirror and thought about the days at the construction site, the laughter he shared with Clara, the smell of dust and coffee. Those were the moments that felt real. Charles Carter, proud of his son's humility, finally lifted the test. "You've proven yourself, Ryan," he said one evening over dinner. "Now take your place. The company is yours." But Ryan's first thought wasn't of power or expansion, it was of Clara. He called her gently the next day. "Clara, can we talk?" "Just coffee. No cameras, no suits." She hesitated, then agreed. They met at the same little cafe where they'd once laughed for hours. He wore a simple shirt, no luxury watch, no chauffeur waiting outside. "I didn't know what to believe at first," she admitted, stirring her drink. "Everyone was talking about you like you were a headline." "I'm still the same person," he said softly. "Just with a name I didn't choose." She smiled faintly. "And a few $1 billion." He laughed. "That too." They spent hours talking again, and though the walls between them weren't fully gone, they were crumbling. Meanwhile, Vanessa's life had turned upside down. The company, tired of her gossip and unprofessional behavior, quietly dismissed her. Rumors spread that she tried to blackmail another executive. Her social media presence became desperate, old photos, cryptic quotes about betrayal and karma. But her followers were dwindling. The world that once adored her was moving on. One morning she marched into a boutique downtown only to find Clara there, shopping for a dress for a friend's engagement. Vanessa's smile was razor sharp. "Well, look who it is. The accountant who bagged the billionaire." Clara blinked. "Vanessa. I didn't bag anyone." "Oh please," Vanessa scoffed. "You think you'd even be on his radar if he wasn't playing some charity game? He'll get bored." Clara met her gaze calmly. "Maybe. But at least he saw something real in me." Vanessa's smirk faltered for just a second. Later that week, the company prepared for its annual spring gala, a grand affair where business leaders, investors, and media gathered. Ryan was expected to attend, and so was his special guest. The news triggered a frenzy of speculation online. Vanessa, hearing the rumors, decided to crash the event. The night of the gala shimmered like a dream, lights, violins, and the scent of roses in the marble hall. Ryan entered in a tailored black suit, looking effortlessly confident. At his side, Clara wore a silver gown that caught every glimmer of light. She looked like the embodiment of grace. Gasps rippled through the crowd as people whispered, "That's her, the accountant who stole the heir's heart." Ryan didn't care. He held Clara's hand gently and guided her through the room with quiet pride. His father raised a glass during the speeches. "Tonight," Charles said, "we celebrate not just business but integrity, the courage to see beyond appearances." His eyes found Ryan's. "And my son has taught me more about that than anyone else." Applause filled the hall. Clara's eyes glistened with emotion. And then Vanessa appeared. She stepped out from the shadows near the back entrance, wearing a crimson dress and a forced smile. Whispers spread like wildfire. Ryan noticed her, but his expression didn't change. She walked up to him, ignoring the stares. "Ryan, can we talk?" He sighed quietly. "Vanessa, this isn't the place." "It's the only place," she said bitterly. "You humiliated me. Everyone thinks I was some gold digger chasing a paycheck." Ryan looked at her calmly. "You humiliated yourself. I gave you respect when I had nothing, and you gave me contempt in return." Her jaw trembled. "I didn't know." "That's the point," he interrupted gently. "You shouldn't have to know." The room was silent, all eyes on them. Vanessa blinked rapidly, realizing there was no way to twist the story this time. Clara stood beside Ryan, her expression composed but compassionate. "Vanessa," Clara said softly, "we all make mistakes. But maybe this is your chance to change how you treat people." For the first time Vanessa looked small, lost even. She turned and left the hall without another word. Ryan exhaled deeply, taking Clara's hand again. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" she asked. "For reminding me that kindness isn't weakness." They danced that night under the chandeliers, the world fading to a blur of light and laughter. Cameras flashed, but Ryan didn't care. He wasn't dancing with fame. He was dancing with the woman who'd seen him when no one else did. The following weeks cemented their bond. Clara began visiting the Carter office more often, not as an employee but as Ryan's partner. She helped him launch a new charity fund to support education for underprivileged students, something she'd always dreamed of doing. One afternoon, while reviewing proposals together, Ryan leaned close and murmured, "You know, the best deal I ever made wasn't on paper." She smiled. "Oh yeah? What was it?" He grinned. "Convincing you to have coffee with me." Clara laughed, and for Ryan that sound was worth more than every fortune his family had ever built. But the story wasn't over yet. Because every fairy tale, even the modern ones, needed one final test. The moment where love was proved not by words but by choices. And that moment was coming sooner than either of them expected. A few months later, the city skyline glittered beneath a deep summer sunset. Everything seemed perfect. Ryan's leadership had strengthened his father's company, the media adored his humility, and his relationship with Clara had become the talk of the business world. But perfection never lasts without a test. One morning, as Ryan sat in his office overlooking the glass towers, his assistant rushed in with a pale face. "Sir, we have a problem. Someone leaked confidential documents, project plans, client data, everything." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean leaked?" "They're online, sir. The media's already running stories questioning our ethics." Within hours, news outlets flooded with headlines, "Carter Holdings scandal, CEO under fire for data leak." Stocks began to dip. Investors panicked. Ryan's phone buzzed nonstop. Even Clara, who was in a meeting across town, saw the news flash on her tablet. She immediately left and headed straight for his office. When she arrived, Ryan was standing by the window, silent but calm. "Do you know who did this?" she asked softly. He turned to her. "Not yet. But whoever it is wants to ruin us and maybe ruin me." Clara walked to his desk and began checking the reports. Hours passed as they combed through emails, transaction logs, and system records. Then she noticed something. An external access login from an account that didn't belong to any employee. "Ryan," she whispered. "Look at this." He leaned in. The username froze them both. Vanessa.k. Ryan sighed heavily. She still had temporary consultant access after she left. "I should have revoked it." He wanted to be angry, but instead he felt disappointment. "I thought she'd moved on." Clara gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let's not assume. Maybe someone used her name." They called the cyber unit, who traced the login to an old tablet registered under Vanessa's credentials, but used from an unknown downtown location. 2 days later, Vanessa was brought in for questioning. When she saw Ryan and Clara waiting in the lobby, her face fell. "You think I'd do this?" she said, her voice trembling. "I've made mistakes, but I wouldn't destroy your company." Ryan's eyes searched hers. "Then tell me who would." She hesitated, then looked away. "A man approached me a few weeks ago. Said he worked for your rivals. Offered me money to get into the company system. Said it would teach you a lesson. I refused. But he must have gotten into my old tablet. I didn't think it mattered anymore." Clara exchanged a glance with Ryan. They could see the shame in Vanessa's eyes. After an investigation, the truth surfaced. A rival firm had indeed orchestrated the leak, exploiting Vanessa's old credentials to make her a scapegoat. The company quickly cleared her name, and the public apology that followed went viral. For the first time in years, Vanessa disappeared from gossip pages, not in disgrace but in quiet reflection. Weeks later she sent a letter to Ryan and Clara. "Thank you for believing I wasn't beyond saving. You both taught me that kindness is stronger than ego. I'm starting over and this time I'll be better." Ryan folded the letter carefully, a small smile on his face. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he murmured. Months passed and the scandal became history. The company rebounded stronger than ever. And Ryan, true to his word, stepped back from corporate spotlights to focus on something more personal. On a crisp autumn evening, he invited Clara to the rooftop where they'd shared their first quiet sunset together. The skyline glittered, the same as the day they met, but this time, everything was different. She wore a simple white dress. He wore no tie, just that familiar, calm smile she'd fallen for. "Clara," he began softly, "you once told me that life isn't about how much you have, but what you do with what you're given. You've given me something no amount of money could buy: peace, love, and purpose." She blinked back tears as he knelt down, a velvet box in hand. "Will you marry me?" Her laughter broke through the tears. "Ryan Carter, I thought you'd never ask." He slipped the ring onto her finger as the city lights shimmered like stars below. Applause erupted from the few close friends and family who'd been watching quietly from the shadows. A year later, their wedding became one of the most beautiful the city had ever seen, not because it was grand but because it was real. It was held in a garden surrounded by white roses and candles, where guests laughed, cried, and celebrated a love story that had started in the most unlikely place, a dusty construction site. Vanessa attended quietly, dressed modestly, smiling genuinely for the first time in years. After the ceremony, Clara approached her. "I'm glad you came," she said kindly. Vanessa nodded. "I wouldn't miss it. You both taught me what true love looks like." Ryan joined them, shaking Vanessa's hand. "Thank you for being here," he said. She smiled. "Thank you for forgiving me." As the evening drew to a close, Ryan and Clara shared their first dance under a canopy of lights. The soft melody filled the air as he whispered, "From nothing to everything, and all because you saw me." Clara smiled. "No, Ryan. Because you let me see you." And as they swayed together, surrounded by friends, laughter, and the glow of the city beyond, the world finally understood. True wealth isn't in what you own, it's in who stands by you when you have nothing.